builder. So this week we're going to be working on card cases. We have a 4x4 option, which is smaller, and then we have a 5x7, which is a snap card case. So I'm going to get my iPad set up and get the rest of the stuff ready to go, and we are going to get rocking and rolling. All right. Let's see. Okay, hopefully. Oops, nope. All right. All right, we're here. We're ready to go. So this week we are stitching up these two little guys. So we have a 4x4 version, which will fit a card, ID, cash. So this is a nice quick version for like gift cards and things too. If you want to have maybe a couple cards and toss it in your bag without carrying a huge wallet around, these are a good option. And like I said, they make great gifts too. They're really quick and easy. The other option that we're going to do tonight too, which is a 5x7 larger, is a snap case. So again, we have stuff, we have room on the inside to put our stuff, but on the back, we have room to put our ID in. So if you want to kind of keep your ID handy without digging it out, these clear options, this is a good option for you as well. We're going to do the 4x4 one first. That's the quickest and easiest one. It requires no hardware. You can use tearaway stabilizer, cutaway stabilizer, whatever you got in your hoop is fine. You're just going to want a non-fraying material, vinyl, cork. You do felt pinch as well. I'm going to do mine in vinyl. What I will say with this, I have a few options of card cases for the 4x4 ones, and they're all pretty much the same thing. So this tutorial will pretty much apply to most of the 4x4 card cases. Even if it's shaped a little bit different, the steps are going to be the same. It's really just you're placing this down, you're running the design on the front portion if there is one, and then you're adding a backing. So it's not much different than a snap tab, to be honest. The only thing that I want you to watch out for when we get to the 5x7, we're going to be using clear vinyl, and we can use the same gauge clear vinyl that we use for shakers. So again, we're going to go between a 12 gauge and no higher than a 20 gauge clear vinyl using a small piece. When we're doing these, and I do leave the insides raw on mine, you could add a layer of olefin or something on the back with this if that bothered you, but no one sees on the inside, so I don't worry about it. What you are going to want to make sure when you're cutting your pieces, though, especially for these pocket pieces in the clear one, that your edge across the top here is nice and straight cut. You don't want wonky lines because you're going to see that. So as you're cutting materials, just make sure that you get those edges nice and straight for the pocket here and the pocket on the back. The rest of it's not going to matter. We can trim up later. But for those two pieces, we're going to make sure we have one of those long edges nice and tight and smooth and even. All right, so we're gonna do the 4x4 one first. This is not a very dense design, so I'm just using one layer of cutaway. You can go with tearaway with these two. It's not a big deal. And I'll show you as we get to it. If you don't like this being raw on the inside, I'll show you what you can do when we get to that point. But these guys, doesn't matter if it's raw on the inside. Literally no one's looking inside your wallet to see inside. I hope not anyways. So you should be good to go. All right, so first step for our 4x4 is we're going to run our placement stitches right on stabilizer. And I'm doing a color that everyone can hopefully see on camera. And of course, I had to be difficult and I wanted to use this kind of like variegated ombre vinyl, but I don't want it to be straight up and down. So I am going to actually turn it so those stripes are kind of going diagonal. I don't know. I just got to be different, I guess. All right. So that's why mine's on there like that, because I just want the look of it being kind of diagonal. It's going to be straight up and down when we do the other one, but for this one, I wanted to be a little bit different. I'm actually going to use white for all my flowers because I feel like it. But the flowers include color stops to do 3 different colors for the flowers if you would like, but I'm just going to stick with the white. I kind of want to go simple on this one. All right. So we've got a few minutes where it's going to stitch out the petals for our flowers before it does the center in. What I will say too, I'm using a vinyl called Diamond Dust. It's by Sadie Designs, and it's great for holding statins and fills and things like that. These petals are kind of small. So if you are using a marine vinyl, especially a lighter color marine vinyl, like a white or a light pink, um, these stitches, especially on the small one, you might notice that they're not stitching as neatly as you want to on vinyl. And the fix for that, and I think I talked about it in Snap Tabs too, is getting a water soluble topper to put on top of your vinyl. You can, if you can see on mine or not, they're pretty distinct and pretty crisp. But if I were to put white marine vinyl in here, because white marine vinyl is like the worst vinyl to stitch on, it likes to eat stitches. You have to just be careful with your stabilizer. So if you're finding that happening, especially it happens on like smaller areas or small text, you'll see where it's kind of eating in. The fix is to get a water soluble topper. I've got, hopefully, I have some out here. I do. It's kind of hidden over here. There's typically two types of toppers you can get. There's different weights, but there's one option, which is like this plasticky stuff, which is what I tend to use the most, only because I don't have to actually wash it. When I'm done, I can kind of rip it away, and it pulls out pretty clean. Anything else I'm missing when it leaves on there, I can pull out with a pencil eraser. I can just kind of erase it and it pulls it out. The other option is to get a mesh water soluble topper. And that, I grab the right one here, looks like this. So this is actually, I would say, a better product per se. Um, it's gonna hold up better. The only downside to this is you actually will need to rinse this off, soak this off, if you're at the washing machine. Which, if you're doing something on like fleece, things like that, it's not a big deal. But on things like wallets or snap, I don't want to soak it off. I don't want to deal with that. So that is why I often go to this. And you can double up with this as well. Um, but I keep this handy for those vinyls that like to eat stitches. And if you haven't come across that yet, someday you will. And as soon as it happens, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, but that's going to be your fix if you find that your stitches are kind of sinking in. And I found too, like it's not even all marine vinyl, it's like the lighter colors. And I'm sure there's probably some actual reason, like maybe they use less of the bonders and certain pigments they use. But white marine is the hardest vinyl to use. So if you're new at embroidering and you're not getting good results on white marine, I promise you it's not you. It's the vinyl. And I'm tempted. I'm actually going to throw a little piece of that plastic one over on our last step here, just so I can show you what I'm talking about, but I can just pull it away from the design when it's done. My favorite, so honestly, I don't know if I have a favorite vinyl. I really like the Diamond Dust line from Stay Unique, which is what I use a lot, because it holds up really well to most satins and fills and things like that. But I tend to like glitter vinyls. I feel like they kind of hold up better. But here's the crazy thing, I actually really like glitter canvas too, which is not used as much anymore. It used to be, it's a little thinner. It's not my favorite, but I think right now my current obsession is the Diamond Dust. But I don't like it for everything. I use it for some bags, but I do find the Diamond Dust sometimes will hold wrinkles a little more than I want. So it really kind of just depends on the project. It is so sparkly and I love it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a little piece of this topper down. I don't really need it, but I want to show you how I can just kind of pull that away, no problem. And I guess I should grab a pink to stitch. That probably would be helpful if I picked out a pink ahead of time, but of course I didn't. We're going to grab this one. Yeah, that's pretty bright. Flowers can have pink metals, right? All right. There we are. That. All right. So I'm just on these two. On the small area, I'm not too worried about it. But sometimes if you walk away from your machine and you just lay this topper down and you walk away, sometimes it can kind of bunch up. So just keep an eye on it. And when we get to stuffies, I think we have stuffies coming up in a couple weeks. I will be using and talking about this a lot more, this topper, and show you kind of how to work with it. But for things like this on small things like snap tabs or wallets or bag tags, if you were to find that you needed it, honestly, just throw it on real quick. There's not a whole lot to bunch up here. Oh, I don't like that pink. Well, choices were made. We're going to go with it now. So see, I'm not worried about too much shifting in this small area. And I'm actually going to tear it away as soon as this fish finishes here. All right, I'm going to tear this away so you can see real quick. All right, so with this, I've got it down. It literally just pulls away from the design. Sometimes you'll get like small pieces that might get stuck in like smaller areas. All I do is grab a seam ripper. And the back of my seam rippers are like a pencil eraser kind of thing. And you can just erase it and it'll pull out. Um, so that is just my little tip. And you can see on this, the vinyl held up really great too. The satin stitches, they're nice and crisp. I don't have to worry too much there. I don't have any stitching. But if you do find they're sinking in, that's kind of how you fix that. And hey, everyone, it's so weird seeing everyone's screen names too, because I don't know. I know everyone in the group, but sometimes I don't know their names here. But I do recognize Regina's name. All right, so the next step we have here is going to be our top stitching just for the top of this pocket here on the front. So it looks finished on the front, because in the back, we're not going to have that because we need to leave it open so we can fit a card in. So just this step here, we're not adding the backing yet. We're just stitching this down here so we kind of give the illusion of that top stitching to make it look like it's all stitched all the way around. So I'm going to use a color that matches my vinyl, which good luck because I've got 5 different colors here, but I decided we're going to go with blue. So, and again, this is just on that one piece of vinyl in the hoop. We've not added a backing yet. And we're just going to stitch right across that top here. All right, I don't hate the pink in the middle as much as I did kind of a second ago. I think it works. All right, so now we're ready to add the back. So this is where a lot of people, I think, get kind of confused on that top stitching piece that we do. Some people like to add the backing and then run this. That's going to keep your wallet stitch closed. So make sure that before you add the backing, you run that step that does that kind of that side stitching, so that you're going to be able to leave that open to actually add a card. So just take your hoop off, flip it over, and you're going to take your backing piece of vinyl. Mine's way too big because I wanted it kind of on a diagonal there. And I'm gonna, if you need to, tape it in place outside of your line of stitching. If my piece were smaller, I would just place it down and just add some tape around to make sure that everything is covered. You want all your stitches to be covered. All right, I'm just gonna slide that in there. My piece was big enough, so I'm not really worried about it coming. Of course, I say that now and watch it slide out on me. All right, so we're gonna go with the blue, and this will attach our front and back pieces. And then we're going to move on to our 5x7. And I'm looking at the video on my iPad. This is actually like a hot pink. It kind of looks like it's like a red on the camera, but I promise this is more of a hot pink. All right, so this is actually technically done. So I'm going to pull this out and we'll come back to this when we trim it. But here's the front of the design and here is the back. See, what left that open. So we're going to set this aside for now. We'll come back and we'll trim everything up at the same time we finish our other wallets. So we're going to move on to the 5x7, which it has the clear pocket on the back. So let me put that in my machine there. Oops. Where are you? There you are. All right, so same as the other one, we're gonna do our step one just on our stabilizer. I'm again just using like a medium cutaway in mine. It's not a dentist design. So honestly, cutaway, tearaway is gonna be fine on this. And my machine sometimes like hates stitching directly on stabilizer. I don't know why. It'll do fine for 100 designs and then one design randomly, it pops off. So if that happens to you, it happens more often than you think. I can kind of see where my lines were. I can see the perforations in the stabilizer. I'm going to see if it'll pick it back up if I run it again. I'm skeptical. Just so you can see the placements on can we actually stitch on it this time? There we go. I don't know why it does that. Usually when it does that, I just ignore it and I can see my placement stitches from where it left the perforations, but obviously that doesn't translate very well on the camera, so. All right, so we're now ready to place our main vinyl. So this will be what we're seeing, this part here. So kind of our back where our pocket is and that top flap there. So I'm just gonna place this down. Of course I'm using stripes, so I guess I kind of have to get it even or they're gonna be wonky because I feel like I wasn't gonna be able to adequately do the back on an angle. So mix and match there. All right, so I'm gonna do the same thing before. I'm gonna do white for my flowers. And I'm always afraid. I don't know why it gets looped in my needle, which I know is fine, but I just have this paranoia that it's gonna like get stuck and knot up. So I always pull it through. And I spent probably a good 2 hours on this machine this week because I was convinced it was broken. Everything was stitching terribly. My thread was nesting. I couldn't figure anything out. And then I realized that I had raised my presser foot to stitch up so many stuffies and forgot to lower it. And that was the entire problem. But it took me 2 hours to remember to check that. So here's a tip. If you ever raise your presser foot, which if your machine can, that'll be super helpful when we do things like stuffies later. But always remember to put it back down when you're done because your machine doesn't like stitching at a higher presser foot height than the standard manufacturer set unless it's necessary. And then you'll pull your hair out trying to think your machine is broken. I was planning my trip to drive to Michigan to my dealer, and it was just a setting I needed to fix. All right, we got one flower done. I'll go on to the next. I'm going to go ahead and keep the white flowers. I think I'll do blue for the center this time. This is now our third week doing the YouTube lives. And so I know it's been kind of a learning curve, but I'm just curious to see what everyone's thoughts is on the YouTubes, if we should keep the lives here, if we hate it. I'm open to hearing feedback on that. If we're not liking the switch, we prefer it on Facebook, which I would still post it to YouTube later after the live is over, like I've done for previous skill builders. I just thought the benefit of keeping the chat up would be nice. So it's not just me randomly answering questions that no one heard asked. So if anyone hates this or they're not liking it, let me know. And if we get a consensus, we can always go back to Facebook as well for the lives. Because I'm like 50-50. So we got one for YouTube. Okay. Like I said, and I haven't heard anything super negative about it. I'm just trying to kind of gauge what everyone, if anyone super hates this, having it here versus Facebook. It's definitely easier for me to have it on YouTube. I will say that. It's easier for me because then I don't have to like download the video and then upload it and all that. It's already here. But that's just for selfish reasons that I feel like it's a little bit easier. And I learned the hard way that Facebook deletes videos after like is it bad on Facebook? The video quality? And I was hoping on YouTube I could rotate my camera so it would be like landscape instead of portrait, but it doesn't let me do it on lives either. I can't rotate my phone or it won't record live. I don't understand. Like it feels like it would be a better option, but it won't let me do it. Can't do it on Facebook either, so it doesn't matter. And then next week, I'm still on this holding pattern of getting my stuff. I thought I was so convinced I had my basement, and then it was like starting some work and then stopping and then waiting in a holding pattern. So I'm still waiting. So I'm just going to assume that we're doing next week as scheduled until I hear otherwise. And I'll let you guys know as soon as I hear something as well, if that were to change. But until I hear otherwise, we're going to continue on doing doing our lives as scheduled every week. And I typically like to keep it on Sunday evenings, so the time should be about the same. And I'll have that scheduled like midweek this week. But it'll typically be Sundays around 7. That way everyone can have dinner. I know different time zones are different, but hopefully this isn't too much for everybody with the time zones. I have a little piece of thread that's bothering me that I want to trim. Of course, it's going to be. So I like to, when I see like loose threads, I tend to like to cut them as I go so they don't get like trapped and harder to cut later. That's just my preference. All right. We're going to go with the blue center this time. I tried starting it in landscape and it prompted me to turn my phone. Like it wouldn't let me start recording, which was super annoying. So I don't know if there's like a setting somewhere that I need to like figure out, which is possible. It's just me being ignorant to it. It's totally possible, but it wouldn't let me when I tried. And I'm not tech savvy enough to get like a GoPro and do all that. I can't do all that. I'm just excited when I don't drop my phone in the middle of recording. I feel like that's success for me. I'm really not digging these colors that I picked tonight, but it's fine. It's all fine. I know, Regina, it's my life. Technology is hard. All right. So now we have placement for our clear vinyl pocket. So this will be, you'll want your thread color to match your vinyl roughly. Mine's obviously, you're going to see where I'm stitching because I'm doing 3 different colors on this. But that's where you want it to kind of match in and blend in later. And that's just going to show you where to place your clear pocket. And I have my clear vinyl cut. All right, so with this, I have my straightest long edge here along the top. So this is where I made sure I cut this super. It's kind of wonky on the bottom of the sides. That's fine. I'm going to place this so it is just right about that top of the line there on across that top line of stitching on the top of your box. It's over by like a millimeter, which is fine. Um, you just don't want it to be too high up to where you have to trim it because it'll just get difficult to trim because it's going to be stitched down. And this is just tacking this down. I don't have to hold it too much, but I'm just going to keep my eye on it to make sure it doesn't shift up by like an inch. Once you get one side down, you're usually pretty good to go. And this is just stitching the sides and the bottom so that top will stay open. Okay, so we've got our clear pocket stitch on. You have two choices here. You can either, if you want, if your piece is big enough, you can just leave it and then just trim it up when your last line of stitching comes down. So that is an option because as this is here, if you want, you can just wait and you can trim it at the end if you want to do that. I am weird. I'm going to trim it now because I don't know. It's just how I am. I like to kind of work as I go. This is, Regina, this is, this is 12 gauge, I think. I think it's 12 gauge. I'm almost positive it's 12 gauge. But you can go up. You can do anywhere between 12 or 20 gauge on these without a problem. But I just wouldn't go less than 12 and I wouldn't go higher than 20 or it's just gonna get thick. So I'm just gonna run this through and just trim up these three sides. But again, if you want to skip this step, you can, and you can just trim the clear vinyl and it'll just be in your final outline stitch and really no one's gonna notice. It's not gonna be a big deal. But I just like to trim as I go. And I find too, the same thing is true with some of the shakers too, especially if the shape is really close to the final outline, you can just leave the clear vinyl and trim it at the end if you don't mind kind of seeing right around the outside of it, but it's not really a big deal. All right, so our clear vinyl is on there. Our next step is going to be just putting some lines down so we can see where to place our pocket on the back side. So this will be far enough outside your line of stitching that you can trim this away. So just the color does not matter. But just make sure it's something that you can see. It's just a real quick line on either side. You can see it right there. And this, I am going to need tape for this. Where's my tape? There it is. All right, so a couple options here. I should have said this before. If you do not like the idea of this inside showing on the back of this, again, I don't mind it. I don't care. If this bothers you and you want all those covered, you can cut a piece of olefin, however you want to pronounce it. It's that polypropylene fabric. We're going to need that later, or it's helpful later when we are doing things like notebook covers. It's a waterproof fabric. It's the fabric that when you get like those really kind of thin, flimsy, reusable totes, not the canvas ones, but like the real kind of ones that everyone really kind of hates, that is polypropylene. And they sell it under the brand name Olefin, OLY hyphen FUN. And it's pretty cheap, honestly. You can get a yard of it for like $7, or you can get a pack of it some places too in a bunch of different colors. 1 yard will last you forever. So that is the option too. If you don't like this, cut yourself a little piece of olefin. It's really thin. I'm trying to think if I have any handy to show. I don't think I have any cut right now, but where is, okay. If I can show you on camera here. This inside pocket here, this stuff right here, it's kind of got a texture to it. It's really thin. That is the Olifun. So that would be a good option to cover those stitches. If you want to do that, go ahead and put that in place now. You actually should have, you can put that down. It probably would have been easier before you ran your placement stitches. I should recommend doing that. That way you can see to line your pocket up. But put that down, run this, and then you're going to run your placement stitches, and then that's where we are right here. So I've got these lines right here. I can see where the top card for the clear line vinyl was, and I have my placement stitches right here. I want to lay my pocket just where it covers up just the top of that stitch there. You can kind of see on the curve where this is going to fold down. We have about, I don't know, quarter of an inch or so between the card pocket and that curve where it's going to fold. So just follow those lines on the side, place it where it's covering those up. You want to use the straightest edge you have there so that everything's going to be nice and neat and even, so you're not trying to trim that up later. And I'm going to use some tape to secure that in place. So I don't like having any tape in my line of stitching. You can barely see that top line for the placement stitches there and there. Just let me trim that real quick so you can see a little better. All those thread pubes everywhere. Of course, I think I just made them more. So the top line's right there and you can barely see it just right there. And again, this doesn't need to be too exact. If you're a little lower, it's fine. The biggest thing is you don't want to be above that line because you don't want it to be where, well, crap, now my pocket's like folding under when I close the wallet. So if you're worried about it, go a little bit lower versus higher. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tape that down there. And I'm going to tape it down here. I'm not putting any tape where my needle is going to go because my machine revolts the idea of stitching over any tape. And we're going to put this back on without rolling my vinyl. And I swear to God, I felt this just shift. Sure did. I have a love-hate relationship with masking tape because it never likes to stay in place for me when I want it to. And then other times I can't ever get it off. So I'm going to add a little more on the sides just to make sure, since it just tried to psych me out there. I have been told for probably 2 years I need to switch to medical tape, and I keep meaning to do that, and I keep forgetting to order it. But it's vastly better to masking tape for in the hoop projects, and I believe that it is. I haven't tried it just because I keep forgetting to order it. All right, so now we're in place, pocket is secure, and we're gonna run our final step, which is gonna be to tack down our inside pocket and to show us our placement for our snap. Yes, my machine was much happier stitching down the vinyl this week because I unpacked my needles and put fresh needles in. Unlike when I did the shakers and my machine was like, what is happening? Because my needle was so dull last week when we did this. Oh, okay. All right. So we are ready to go over and trim everything up. So what I need to do is I need to move my phone over So it's over the table. So if you get seasick, look away for a second. I'm going to go ahead and swing everything over. And sorry for the inside look at my palm here while I get everything moved up and over and get you placed at the table. Like I said, anytime I do this and I don't drop the phone, I feel like it's a smashing success. All right, success it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop my hoop out. I have our 4x4 and I have our 5x7. So let's start with the 4x4. We're just gonna pop this out of the hoop. And I'm going to use a rotary cutter. And I am going to trim that up. I used to go a 1/4 inch or so away from line of stitching. Don't get too close. You don't want to accidentally trim your stitches. Just follow your heart on that. And my rotary cutter I can feel is becoming unscrewed there. All right, so then we just have this area here at the top to cut. So I just got my scissors, just gonna chop across. And then I'm just gonna go in. And again, I'm turning my vinyl, not my scissors as I go. That'll help get you a smoother cut. And that's it. So here's the front, here is the back. Here's my card. So that's it. So card case in there. You got a room, you can grab it out pretty easily if you want to. I shoved it really far in there, but money, cards, whatever, 4x4, super easy, super quick. And like I said, this applies to most of the 4x4 card cases I have. Kind of those steps are going to be the same. The 5x7, where'd you go? There you are. Only difference here, we got to trim a little more and we need to add a snap. Which actually, with this, I have found actually having like a hand press for snaps is going to make it a little bit easier to kind of get inside that pocket, but we can make do with our table press here. That's all I have. All right, so I'm going to trim this out. And see what I mean, how where the clear vinyl is? Like you could have left that and trimmed this with your wallet and it would have been fine. But that's just me being particular. I like to trim as I go. Get those 3 sides trimmed up and see here where our placement stitches were for the pocket. It's going to be trimmed away. So we're not even like they were never there. All right. And then I will take my scissors and we will just go around that top edge here for our flap. All right, so here's where we're at now. Minus all the mess over here. We're just going to shove to the side, pretend it doesn't exist. I need 1 pair of cam snaps. I'm going to be using, I like size 20 extra long. Size 20, I think, is the default size. With the extra long, you do have to purchase as extra long. And that just means the posts are a little bit longer and it helps to kind of grab onto several layers of vinyl without an issue. Granted, we're using like 1 layer of vinyl. Unless you added your olefin, but even so, that's not adding much there. I would add the RDF as your backing. So when I talked about the olefin, so before you do your placement stitch for this pocket here, I would add the backing. I would just run back to, what I would do is I would go back to the first step. So before those 2 lines are placed, put your RDF fabric in there. Assuming if it's fraying or non-fraying. If it is fraying, I would do that and then add a piece of olefin over it just to kind of, and cut it a little bit smaller. So that way the edges aren't going to be out to get frayed. But once you get it down, rerun the very first step of your design, your placement, that will kind of tack it down for you. And then go back to adding your line placements for your pocket in the back. Does that make sense? That's where I would put that. All right. Where is my... This is the problem. I am like the world's messiest person when I create anything. And my little stiletto for punching the hole in my can snaps is not immediately visible to me, which means it's lost in a sea of randomness. So I do have a stiletto here. This will work. All right, so I'm just gonna go right in this, right in the center of this hole here. And I'm just gonna punch through. Oh, didn't take my whole stiletto with me. All right, so I have my table press. The hardest part about this is gonna be getting inside that pocket. And it's gonna be hard doing at a table. See here? So what I'm gonna be doing kind of off camera is I'm going to, if I had an extra person here, you can even slide this up. I'm gonna end up putting this pocket over like this when I get to there. So just keep that in mind. But for this first part here, it's super easy. I'm just gonna grab and put the flat part here on the front. And then on the back, I'm gonna grab the male side first. And I have some thread and no good snips over here. Pretend I'm cleaning this up a little nicer. All right, so the male part in here. All right, now what I want you to do, you have your male part here. I want you to fold your wallet down to where you want that fold to be. So right there along the top, and then just push down this snap here. And that is going, if you can tell on camera, it's gonna leave me a little kind of circle there. It's gonna give me a little marking to know where to push my stiletto through. So I can see it in the light, got the center right there. I'm putting my fingers inside here just so I don't punch through all the way to the front side. I just wanna get a small little hole poked. And the flat part is actually gonna go on the inside here, if I can get it. The hard part is seeing what you're doing here. All right, so right there. And then I'm gonna take my female. What I'm gonna kind of do off camera, just because this can be, it's easier with a hand press if you've got a hand press. I'm like I said, I'm gonna just kind of push this off the table so I have a little bit of a lip. And I am putting it so the bottom of the flap is under my table press and the pocket's up here so I can kind of get inside of it. But I can't, it's too heavy for me to hold up and do it. So I'm gonna have to slide off the camera for a second, sorry, and kind of get that in place. Which these things are so heavy, these table presses. And I just knocked out my snap from the hole because I got overconfident there. All right, I've got my snap in place. I almost dropped the press in my pocket. That would not have been a good time. And here I am. I'm in. All right, so here's it finished. Open. Closed. And if you want and you're worried about this top kind of not being as flat as you want it to be, you can just put that under something heavy for the night and that's going to help kind of hold that crease. But we have our clear pocket on the back. We can fit our ID in or whatever, really. Have our pocket inside to hold our cards. So we got two versions. I honestly feel like I'd probably grab this first for me. If I was going out, I wanted to take a couple cards or some cash with me and throw my ID in there if I need it. But the way I can see what I'm grabbing, that is just me. So two different options depending on the size of your hoop and what you want to do. And that's it. So these are the wallets. Yeah, it's a little awkward. So if you have a hand press, this is actually the one time it's going to be easier to use a hand press to get those snaps in. But that's it. They're pretty quick. They're pretty easy, especially the 4x4 versions. They're super quick and easy. So I hope that was helpful. Next week, we are doing patches, which are like my favorite thing to do. So I'm excited about that. I got that to you already this week. So we're a week behind. I think the week that's coming up, I want to say we're doing sleep masks after patches. So if that's the case, I'll have a sleep mask designed to you this week, even though we're kind of a week behind in our lives. We'll have the designs up. At the same time we should have them. So that is it. And that's all I've got this week. So, but it's a fab week. And we're back, hopefully, knock on wood. My plan is for next Sunday. And we'll see how that goes. Patches do take longer Just to stitch up for a patch takes about an hour to do it. So just to kind of give you fair warning on that. And I'll get materials up, designs to you already, but materials should be in there. Follow that list. We're just going to do the 3-inch version is what I'll do because it'll take less time. It's a little smaller. So I hope everyone has a fabulous week, and I hope we'll see you on next Sunday. All right. Bye, everyone.